All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next concurrent session of the day, Discussion Board, Ideas for Revamping Online Discussion Boards. Our presenters today are Kirsten Mimaris and Tammy Tackard, faculty members at Purdue University Global with over 20 years of experience in online education. Kirsten has experience in various roles, including developing course content and managing online course software. Tammy teaches several math classes and has served as the subject matter expert and course lead on multiple course revisions to keep courses current and relevant. If you have any questions for the presenters during the session, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenters.
Oh, I guess that means me. Thank you, Tammy, for sharing the presentation. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. Gosh, I'm impressed. We have 17 attendees. That's great. Maybe in the chat, you can let us know like where you are joining us from, what institution you are at, and maybe your role at that institution. As Kelsey mentioned, we are from Purdue University Global, and we teach online. So Tammy's over in Texas, and I'm in Colorado, and we are teaching mostly adult learners, but the ages definitely range between, you know, the young 20s and all the way up to, in fact, I had somebody that was 79. A lovely grandma who was taking my math class. And we teach mathematics classes, but much of the information that we're sharing today hopefully can also be taken into any kind of content area. It is specific to kind of online discussion boards where all the students are taking the classes online. However, I do know that a lot of that there are many that have traditional face-to-face classrooms, but that use online discussion boards or have some kind of online supplement or component to their classes. Yeah, so Roxanne, you're in a hybrid kind of format, exactly. Awesome, Sally, fully online classes, mathematics classes for 23 years, excellent. So that's just kind of good to know for us as we kind of go through this idea. And for those that have taught online education for years and years, you know that the discussion board feature is kind of ubiquitous, and that oftentimes you'll see some kind of discussion board in your class, right? And so, you know, over the years, maybe you're getting a little bored. And that's what we found as well. We've because Tammy and I have been teaching online for several years, we've seen a progression in how the content is delivered and how we can engage with our students. And so that's kind of where the idea of this topic for this hour here has come up, is because, you know, we do need to continually look at how the content is delivered in kind of what fashion, maybe still using the same technical feature of a discussion board, of a you know, asynchronous discussion board, but how can we do it in a better way? So go ahead, Tammy. I'll talk to the next slide here. So let me start off with a very traditional, stereotypical word problem that you might see in a math course. So maybe this looks familiar. You know, a train leaves Cairo at 3 a.m. averaging 30 miles an hour. Another train headed in the same direction leaves Cairo at 6 a.m. averaging 60 miles per hour. So how many hours after the second train leaves will it catch up? Will it overtake that first train? Now, you know, hey, this is a very interesting idea to consider. But let me ask you, is it relevant? I mean, like, who has? I mean, you know, most of our students are in the United States, but definitely not all. We have a lot of military students that are working that are deployed abroad, and you know, we encourage international situations too. So the geography may be completely different. I'm not sure the last time I have taken like a regular train. I mean, I've taken the subway, so maybe that's included. But and it's just it's very much kind of a textbook problem, right? So when you're trying to engage students, this really doesn't do it for me, and I can tell you that most of my students, it really doesn't do that for them either. But when you're trying to engage the students in the math content with a very abstract situation, that's really not going to work. And oftentimes you will see in the discussion boards that they will take a type of word problem and make it into the discussion prompt. So what we are trying to do in our classes is really set up the discussion board assignment, the prompt, the whole way the discussion board is set up to be more engaging and more relevant to our students. Go ahead, Tammy, for the next slide. So let's just, pause here and think, well, do we have to use online discussions? And, what is so special about them? But it's a great opportunity to get that classroom conversation going, which you typically would have in a face-to-face classroom. And this is it's a pretty standard feature that is in most LMSs. So let's work with it. This is what we have to work with. And there's awesome ways in which we can work with it. So some very positives about the online discussion board, the asynchronous discussion forum, is that it does allow students to work at their own pace. So you can imagine a classroom conversation, and sometimes you think of things and you participate in that moment, and sometimes you continue to think about that topic and have a relevation later that evening or the next day. So by having it be asynchronous, it does allow students to post as they are thinking about it when they have those thoughts. It can encourage the discussion outside of that little login of your classroom space to make them think about the content, think about the math topic outside of the virtual class. It has opportunities to facilitate learning from your peers. I mean, who doesn't learn math by looking at examples? And when other students post on the discussion forum, you can learn from that idea as well. We typically, in our classes at Purdue Global, typically allow students to see others' posts. I know there's features for discussion boards that say, hey, you can't see anything until you post, and then you can see things. But anyways, we have it wide open because we believe that learning from their peers is beneficial. Now, we're a math class, and so the discussion board itself allows students to practice writing. Never a bad thing to intertwine writing in math classes and math in any other kind of subject, right? It should be learning at any opportunity, whether or not it's coded as a math class or as a writing class. It has the discussion forums can very much involve those introverted students that may not typically raise their hand, voice their, very outgoing with their opinions and ideas, because it is in some ways a little anonymous. I mean, your name is associated with it, but, it's a little bit removed from the, here and now, right, face to face. And that also, it does have opportunity to facilitate critical thinking skills. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation here about how to do so to facilitate not just, rudimentary, like, oh, hey, nice job when replying to a student, but instead really to dig deeper into the idea and concept and reflect on the concept and make connections to the math content. So, yeah, so those are some real positives about the discussion. And so now let's go into, well, what type of content would be shared in the online discussions? And oftentimes you'll see, if you work through sort of the math content in a textbook, you'll see skill type of problems, and you'll see that, word type of problems, word problems, the descriptive problems, the real life situations, the scenario type of problems. And those lend themselves nicely to being the type of discussion prompts or the assignment that is connected with an online discussion board. So what I have here on the screen on the left-hand side, you're going to see a very typical, again, like that train problem about looking at half-life and using the concept of rational exponents and functions and solving for unknown variables. So we have the chemical element, the nobelium, right? And it has a half-life of 10 minutes under certain conditions. And the problem is, given a sample of 1 gram of nobelium, the amount left after a certain amount of time, after t minutes, is given by this function. And it asks follow-up questions as well. How much nobelium would be left after 5 minutes or after an hour, after a certain time period? And that's what the students would solve. Well, the concept and the skill that we're trying to get at is looking at rational exponents, a fraction in your exponent, and solving that using the order of operations and you know, using evaluating functions. But again, is this something that students can connect to, make connections? That's the wonderful opportunity that the discussion boards in online education has. But this wouldn't really, I don't think this would do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I really make a connection to nobelium. In fact, I had to look up how to actually say it as I was, you know, reading the problem. So instead, what we are going to encourage you to do is make a discussion scenario that is something applicable to the students. So instead, we've transformed this type of problem into a situation such as looking at the half-life of caffeine. And so now we have a problem, the same kind of idea where we have a function with rational exponents, and they're still asked to evaluate given a certain value for the time. But instead, it's a little more relevant to our students. So the half-life of caffeine is about 5.7 hours. So that means half of the caffeine intake will remain in your body, in your system, after 5.7 hours. And so let's consider your own caffeinated beverage. The students can decide on the caffeinated beverage of their choice, ranging from, you know, Lipton black tea to the various varieties of Monster energy drinks, you know, before exercise, during exercise drinks, and decide look up how much caffeine is in, say, a regular 1 serving. And then look at, well, what it would be the amount remaining in your system if you drank the caffeine at, say, lunchtime, and then at bedtime, so that time span, how much will be left at bedtime? And how much would be left if you drank it at dinner time? And then think about, well, how does that affect, you know, how much you can sleep, or if you're having trouble sleeping? A follow-up to this is like looking at it a day later too. And so this is something that my students actually really get into. They're like, wow, I didn't realize, you know, the next day or even at bedtime, if I had my Red Bull while I'm working out after work, I'm still charged up with caffeine. And so it really sticks. And as a side note, I learned something myself. I didn't know that there was a caffeinated hot sauce. I am very proud of that. It was like, after, you know, 7 years of teaching this exact discussion assignment, I learned that there was a caffeinated hot sauce. Kind of cool. So anyway, so it's something that will be more engaging and that sticks with you and makes you think and gives a connection between the math content and what the math skill, right? So that is kind of where we're headed. And we're hoping that, well, that's how we've looked at our discussion assignments. And as you are designing a course, we've come up with I don't know what you call it, Tammy, a very well thought out process. And so I'll pass it on to Tammy and she can explain that very well thought out process.
Thank you, Kirsten. One of the things I like about this discussion question also is there's some peer pressure that goes on. There may be somebody who posts, oh, I drink 8 of whatever a day. And inevitably, there's going to be a classmate reply and say, that's a whole lot of caffeine. And it's almost like good peer pressure. And the students are saying, oh, maybe I should cut back on my caffeine. Anyway, there are all kinds of discussions that go on with this type of discussion question, especially about caffeine, that I find very, very interesting. So it's one of my favorite units in the class. So let's talk about revamping our discussion questions. Let's face it, discussion questions have a really, really bad reputation. You can very easily Google, best answers to discussion questions that make no sense whatsoever. But what we're hoping to do is really give the student a way to connect what they're learning in our math class with the real world outside of math class. This can be the same for whatever subject you teach. Sometimes it's hard for us as an instructor. Sometimes we get zoned in on this one thing and we want to teach it this way, but it makes no connection to the students. It may connect to us, but it doesn't make any connection to the students. So here's what we're going to do. If you have a discussion question that you would really, really, really like to change, maybe the students just don't get it, or they're not excited about it. They don't post very well, something like that. Or you can do this with all of them. First thing to do is select a topic. Then you need to get in the mood. I like to have hot tea. It's up to you. We're going to talk about writing effective prompts. We're going to talk about how to deter plagiarism. We still catch it every once in a while, but we definitely do not want students Googling the question to get the answer. And then we're also going to talk about assessing things on our own. Selecting a topic. Think of something that is troublesome for your students. Maybe it's that one unit where the grades kind of, or maybe it's that one unit where the participation takes a nosedive. Maybe it's the unit with just really the hardest concept, and it would be great to give your students another way to connect the topic so that they can remember it. Maybe the topic isn't covered very much in the text, but according to your objectives, you need to cover it, something like that. Maybe it's something that could be really, really good to use teamwork on or be interactive on. Those are always fun. And then, of course, anything that's just downright fun. And we'll talk about a few of those that we've come up with. But these are the things that we're going to zone in on. And this is what we recommend. You just start with one. Just pick one topic, whatever that one topic is that seems to be a struggle in whatever area for your students. Zone in on that topic first. And then getting into the mood, maybe think about it for a couple of days, maybe talk to some colleagues about it. I know that I have friends in very, very different industries with different jobs, and I may just kind of casually say, hey, do you ever use this? And surprisingly, a lot of them say yes, and they give me some really good ideas. You can also peruse at the back of the textbook. I know who takes joy out of reading a textbook, but sometimes just one little sentence in one of the problems can spark an idea that will turn into a really, really good discussion board question. There may be case studies that have been done in the past. I remember some case studies from when I was young that I did in high school and college that I think would be great discussion board questions if I ever taught a class with those topics in them. Maybe there was something that was originally a group project in your face-to-face class. Maybe it could be revamped into an online environment. Maybe you could take applications just from your own learning. So once you pick that special topic, whatever topic you want to work on now, just meditate on it for a while. Do some research on it, get as much information as you can, drink some hot tea, maybe put some music on, whatever music sparks your creativity. Put that on. Definitely talk to colleagues because they are truthfully our best resource. Our colleagues are the best resource. Now that we've talked about that a little bit, and when you guys post in the chat, we can see it. I don't think everybody can see it, but we can. But is anything coming to mind in the course you teach? Maybe there's a specific topic that's difficult for students. Maybe one that would be really good is maybe a group project, maybe something that's just downright fun. Anything that was maybe great in person, but you've noticed that when you went online, it was just okay. It didn't have the same effect. Does anybody have a topic they want to share? I'll give you some of the ones that we've heard in the past, and that might help some things going too. We had an instructor who taught in the legal department. She taught some law courses. And one of the outcomes was to realize how social media posting will affect you forever and ever, and how it can affect you getting a job. So that was kind of interesting. That was one of the things that was brought up. Also, there was another one in, I think it was a composition class, and they were talking about writing letters. They just couldn't get their students excited in that one. Does anybody else have one? You can also post it in the Q&A and we'll just read it. But this is where you actually get to think, which topic in my course would I want to change? So y'all can keep thinking about that just a little bit. Like, obviously, our examples are going to be math because we're math instructors, but this can apply to any subject matter. Maybe a way, way, way long time ago, last time you took a math class, you covered proportions. And proportions aren't very difficult. It's just one of those things that after math class, you just don't remember the terminology. You may remember the word proportion, but you're not really sure what it meant, not really sure how to solve them. And here's an example of the problem that was a standard for proportions. And it talks about fish in a lake. My husband is very, very into fish. We've had as many as 6 aquariums in the house at one time. So I kind of understand this, but for someone who isn't around this a lot, they're like, why? Why on earth would we want to know the number of fish living in a lake? Like, why? How does that even apply to me? This is one of the topics in the survey of math class that we really wanted to think about, because this question, it just wasn't exciting. It was like, okay, fish. It wasn't fun. It didn't make the students get up and do anything. It didn't encourage them to think about proportions outside of math class. So this is one of them that we focused on when we were revising the course, and we'll show you what we came up with at the end of the presentation. That's just a little bit of a cliffhanger there. The third step for revamping your discussion boards so they're not so boring is to take a good look at Bloom's taxonomy. It seems like you hear that all the time. And when we're doing a course revision, I just want to throw Bloom's taxonomy out the window, but it's actually really good for us as planners because it encourages us to use certain verbs and certain wordage in order to get our students to think more critically. And that's what we're trying to do, is get them to think more critically. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to see what level we can hit with this discussion board. And then we also want to make sure that the questions we ask don't have just one answer. We're not looking for one specific answer from every student. We're looking for every student to get a different answer. Matter of fact, there may be different pathways for our students to get to those answers, and that's encouraged. So divergent questions are the types that allow the students to brainstorm. Or maybe there's one little focal point, or maybe there's a playground. Those are 3 different types, and we're going to do examples of each in just a second. But kind of remember those 3 terms because we're going to talk about them: brainstorm, focal point, and playground. Those are the different types of discussion questions that we can put in our toolbox whenever we're revising our courses. Here's an example of the brainstorming. We asked students to write an essay in math class. I know, it's crazy. And what's funny is the students who like math are upset that they have to write. The students who like writing are upset. The students who like writing are upset because they have to write in a math class. So you can't make everybody happy, but we try. But they are asked to just brainstorm about a community program they want to start. It can be one that's already in effect that maybe they have experience with. It could be something totally new that they don't have any experience with, but they thought about. It could be anything. We do encourage them to stay away from hot topics, but it can really be anything. And the ones that I love, there are a couple of them that I usually see each term in some way or another, but I love the ones about training dogs for military veterans. And I love the ones about collecting books for the local preschool library and just little things like that. Those are the kind that I'm like, yeah, that's really, really nice. I'm a cat person myself. So anything to do with cats is also high on my list. But we're asking students to brainstorm this. In other words, they're pulling something into their math class that they usually don't talk about. And that's going to help them make connections between what we're teaching and what goes on outside. Dogs, fine. Dogs are okay. I like dogs, but cats are awesome. And then we do ask them to come up with some little math calculations in there because it is a math class. But it's that brainstorming idea. It's asking them to just think outside of your normal math class that really helps make the connection. Oh, Kirsten, you're up, right? No, it's me. Okay, playground style. This is one of my favorite ones also because we get to have students go online shopping. And 3 years ago, everybody was like, oh, okay. But you know, during 2020, when all of us were at home, that's all we did, right? All we did was go shopping online and we bought way too much stuff for our homes, but that's a different topic. We're actually going to ask students to go shopping because they're helping out one of their friends. One of their friends' house flooded. They are going to help replace the furniture that was damaged. So not only do they get to go shopping online, which everybody seems to love now, they get to pick out their favorite items. And it's very encouraging to see, it's very interesting to see what some of them pick out. Some of the students will go to super tech, contemporary, sleek designs. And then some students go for the more traditional things, but it's just interesting. It's an extension of their personality. It allows them to pick out what they like. And then, yes, we ask them to do math. We ask them to come up with an estimate. And then we also ask them to go ahead and start a GoFundMe. That's part of another section of our discussion board is they're going to start up a GoFundMe to help this one. All right, Kirsten, I'm going to mute and let you take it.
Thanks, Tammy. So I love talking about this topic because, or this part of the discussion board revision process is thinking about writing effective prompts. Tammy, you can go ahead and go on to the next slide because that's really the fun part of finding a topic and then creating that scenario in a variety of ways to prompt the student to be involved and to learn about that kind of hidden math topic. So we kind of hide the math topic into the scenario that we're presenting. And so you can take a lot of creative approaches. And again, the more variety you have, usually the more spice there is in your course. And it involves different types of learners and it engages different types of students. So the variety is also key. So some creative approaches to provide variety in your discussion boards include having, say, a role-playing type of scenario where students take on different roles as they're posting. Maybe they post as well, I'll give you some examples in a minute. You can also set up a debate, again, where students are assigned different roles to share their thoughts on different sides of the debate. You can involve, you can group students. So let's say you have a class of like 40 students. You can create smaller classes, smaller groups, and have them work together as a team. So those are just a few examples of how to be creative to provide variety in your discussion board assignments throughout the full term of the course. Something that we do in most of the classes, I think, in the math department at Purdue Global have not just directions for the initial posts that students post, a kind of a standard that we've seen across most online education is to require at least 3 posts for the discussion assignment. So typically you'll see directions for the first post. We in the math department also have set up guided peer replies. So the secondary post 2 and 3, where you're replying to other classmates to fulfill the discussion assignment, those 3 posts all have directions. And so we call them guided peer replies. Again, it's, we're trying to scaffold our students into having a math conversation. It's not something that's real common to students to know how to talk about math with each other. So by providing some guidance of what to talk about, we get much more involved and substantial replies. And also, we like to have fun. Again, fun kind of comes up all the time. Okay, so yeah, so let me give a few examples. Tam, if you would go on to the next slide. I have an example here. This comes from our discrete math class, where we assign a role to each of the students. They now aren't a math student in discrete math, but they're an IT consultant that's working for their town, their company, and they want to. They notice that there is some population growth or decline, whether it is with the people in the town, or maybe it's the prairie dog population across the street, or maybe it's new roads, or the lots, the buildings, whatever the case. They notice an increase or decrease, and they want to present a plan for accommodating this decrease or increase. Now, the hidden math topic here that we're asking them to connect with is series and sequences. Okay, so we're couching the idea of that math concept within, population growth or decline, and we set them up as a specific role to present a plan. So that's an example. Tam, if you go on to the next one, we have a teamwork discussion board in our college algebra class, and that's actually one of the courses, excuse me, that I lead. And this one, the idea behind this is we wanted to talk about functions and inverse functions, which is not really covered. We didn't have a lot of time in class to cover it in our seminars, and it's kind of a weird idea. It's a new notation that they have to learn about, and the inverse of the function was just kind of weird. So we couched it within the idea of coding up a message using the function as your, coded, your secret cipher. And then we thought, oh, the inverse function then would decode it. So that's the hidden math topic that's here. And we also kind of couched it in a teamwork example where we grouped them into groups of like 5 to 8 people. And everybody in that group is their own secret spy team. So they want to send messages back and forth. So we do have a little bit of time here. And because it's so much nicer to be involved in the presentation, I decided that we were going to do this example here. So it's not a lot of math, don't worry, but we are going to look at what your college mascot is. So pretend that we all are our own little secret spy team. So everybody in this presentation will be is part of the team. And we want to write secret spy messages back and forth to each other. But we don't want anybody else in the world, to whoever's spying in on the presentation, to be able to read it. So what we're going to do here, the chat is open, by the way. So thank you very much, Kelsey, for opening that up. Just it'll help with this activity. So let's see. This is actually, I confess, it is not my mascot. It is Tammy's mascot, being from Texas, the Lumberjacks. We're going to ask. That's right. Yep. We're going to ask that you think about what your college mascot was, and take the letters. To be able to code up the message, we have to take each letter in your mascot and make it into a number. So we'll just use the position of that letter in the alphabet. On the right-hand side, you'll see that A is the first letter of the alphabet, B is the second letter of the alphabet. So go ahead in the chat, or actually not in the chat yet, sorry, maybe on a piece of paper below you, write down your mascot in numbers. Again, using that lookup table on the right-hand side. L is the 12th letter in the alphabet, so L is then made into the number 12. U is the 21st letter so it gets 21. So now instead of lumberjacks, I have a string of numbers that represents the position of each letter in the alphabet. Now, this is something that many code breakers could hack, because it's pretty obvious that, I mean, that's one of the first things that one might try is, well, hey, what's the 12th letter in the alphabet? It's an L. So many people around could decipher this. We don't want that. So what we're going to do instead, Tammy, if you advanced on, we're going to use a function which happens to be, say, f of x is 2x. So we're going to actually double every number. Now, nobody else besides the people in this room know that secret cipher, which is to double your number. Okay, so that's why we're going to take your string of numbers, which is your college mascot, and now double each number. And then if you would, please put that into the chat, because that is something we can share, and only those that have the secret key, the doubling, that function, would know what that means. Okay. Otherwise, everybody else is going to think, oh, it's just a string of numbers and I really don't know what they are. So thank you, Jill, for starting us off. Thank you, Conley and Sally. Okay, so we have a couple there. I'm going to continue on given our time constraint here. And Tam, if you would advance on to the slide. Now, if you were to see those string of numbers, you wouldn't really know what that is. So one more slide, Tammy. But now what you're going to do, so if you could scroll through the chat, my friends, and pick somebody else's string of numbers that they have coded up. That's their secret message to you. And we are going to decode it. So maybe jot down that string of numbers from one of the other attendees here. And Tammy, one more slide. We will now, to decode the message, you will simply do the inverse operation, the inverse function. Instead of the coding function was to multiply by 2. Therefore, the inverse function would be to divide by 2. And that, my friends, is that hidden math skill that they are learning in this discussion. So take the secret numbers from a classmate or from the audience, and then divide by 2, and then take that number, thank you, Tammy, and translate that back into the letter so that you know what the mascot was. And sadly, since I'm coordinating this, I couldn't share my college mascot, which is the best one. It's the Golden Gophers of the University of Minnesota. Anyways, there's a lot of good pride there in the chat. Thank you, my friends, for having a little fun. So this is an example of what they do in the math class, and also just to make it manageable, we formed them into groups so that's a teamwork kind of thing as well. So you post your secret message, then for post 2, you decode it using the inverse function, and then we have a little team wrap up. All right, Tammy, next slide, if you will.
So I know what you guys are thinking. Wait a minute, that was kind of fun and it was with numbers. Are we supposed to be having fun in math class? There's actually research to say yes, please have fun in math class. You do not have to wear a red nose and an orange curly wig in order to be a clown to have fun in math class. But it is okay to be a little lighthearted. It's okay to do fun activities. It's okay to have everybody laugh. That's perfectly fine. Matter of fact, research shows that it creates a positive social and emotional learning environment. It's definitely what we want in our math classes, because so many of our students come to class with anxiety. If you experience that in your classes too, humor is a great way to just take that down a notch, and it relaxes the student and allows them to learn. It also gives students a perception of success, even if they really, really struggle in the class. If they are having fun, they're taking those ideas and thinking about them, and they're going to maybe tell somebody, you'd never guess what we did in class today. They're going to have fun. Doesn't really matter what their grade is. Okay, it does. But they're going to be less worried about their grade because they're going to be just excited to go to class, happy to be in your class, instead of very, very stressed out. It will also allow your students to have a connection. Like, now I know that John is really funny because, because John's mascot was cool. Just little things like that will help your students have connections with their classmates, especially online, which means that they're going to be engaged just a little bit more. They have something invested. Here's another really, really fun example. This is one of my favorite of all time. Sometimes I tell my classes, oh, this is my favorite one, but for real, this is my favorite one. Because maybe you remember way back in school dealing with quadratic formula, quadratic equations, parabolas, all those are kind of on the same topic. And this discussion question allows them to have fun with that. They are being shot out of a cannon. They are a human cannonball, and they have to figure out different things. There are lots of things that you can figure out with a human cannonball, like how far away the net should be, because we do want you to land safely. We have students calculate how long they'll be in the air. We have them graph it, and this is Kirsten's course, so she has them do all of this. And then we also talk about the vertex and what that means, what that really means for the student. That's my favorite one of all. Thwarting plagiarism. This is the bane of the online existence, but there are some things we can do to reduce the amount of plagiarism. There are some just general guidelines. For example, if you have the exact same discussion question that you've used for the past couple of years, it's probably time to rotate it in some way. That can be as small as tweaking the numbers. For example, on the human cannonball problem, we really looked to see what the velocity needed to be. And I think it's between 75 and 115 miles per hour, right? Maybe. For that, we really looked that up. But from term to term, you might be able to close the gap and then change it each term, so that students cannot just use the same exact thing that somebody used last term. We can also encourage them to come up with their own ideas and present their own thoughts instead of just asking them to work a problem. We can talk about how the instructor being active can also decrease the chances of plagiarism. And then also make sure we're not overloading our students. To us, it may take 20 minutes to complete an assignment. But to that struggling student who hasn't been in a math class in 20 years, it may take them much, much, much longer. Sometimes that's hard to gauge, but we do need to keep that in mind whenever we are creating our courses and our assignments and trying to decide where everything goes. Some math specific things for the mathies in here. We can take current data, and I think there's an example of that in here in just a second. If not, there's one in my mind that we can talk about, or very unique data. We can talk about things that are related directly to the students, and we can even get the class to generate their own data sets. What does that look like? Well, it could look like this. In the business analytics class, we are actually we're sending the students to a website to get the results of a poll. And there are some restrictions on this, but that data changes. There's another one where they are asked to go find the unemployment rates per month for the last 5 months in the area they live in, because our students are all over the world. In the area they live in, they can pick a US city, but the last 5 months, that changes every month. That means every time we get a group of students, they're going to have different numbers. Making sure that the data is current and that it changes constantly. I know for us that may seem bad, but if you're trying to cut down on plagiarism, that's actually a really, really good idea. Another thing we do in the survey of math course is go ask the students to shop for a house. Who hasn't been doing that for the past 2 years, at least just to see what the value of your home is now, right? Or what the neighbor down the street is selling theirs for. But we're asking the students to go find this data that constantly changes. that's currently very, very high. And it allows them to express a little bit of their personality through this also. You may find that one student wants a condo downtown. So all 10 of their prices are going to be condos downtown, where another student needs at least 15 acres because they have a horse. It's another way to bring our students in. They are asked to put the links in this post, so we can just click on those links and make sure they're still active. It reduces the chances that they are going to copy a post from somebody before them. If we're looking for class-generated data, there are lots of ways to do this. This is just one example. But in one class, they are asked to just dig around for their change and find the dates on their change and put all of that in a spreadsheet. That's going to change each term because they're going to put in different numbers each term. The students aren't going to be able to go copy things from earlier in the course. So that's a real fun one also. They have fun with it. Step number 5, this is perhaps one of the most important ones besides writing the effective prompt. Writing the effective prompt is fun, but this is going to let you know whether it actually works or not. Once you've written a discussion board prompt, the first thing I would do is send it out to maybe 5 of your colleagues. Maybe they teach the same course as you do. Maybe they teach a different course, and just ask them to respond to it. See what you get back. If they come back with kind of what you expected, then you're on the right track. If you get 5 totally different responses, then that is a really, really helpful piece of criticism, I guess, to make sure that the directions are very specific and that you say exactly what you want. You can also do a trial run. You can either open it up to more colleagues, or if you want to, you can ask some of the current students to see how they would do it, what their answers would be. And you can also rate it. Here's what we mean by rate it. Just ask yourself a bunch of questions. I can tell you right now, though, talking to your colleagues, especially the ones, do y'all have those colleagues who like find every single little thing? I love sending them to those colleagues because they're going to come back with a list. Well, this is, you might want to change this. I like that. But go through the list and make sure that the discussion board prompt is effective. Remember earlier in the class, we talked about the fish in the lake proportions problem. This was kind of the old school problem. Well, what we did is we decided to change it into how many steps you walk per day. We asked the students to time themselves, and every once in a while, we change the number of steps that they take. So far, we've done 50 steps and 75 steps, and I think we're about to change it again. That's the reducing plagiarism part. But we asked them how long it would take, how long it took them to walk those 75 steps. Then they used proportions to figure out how long it would take to walk 10,000 steps. That creates really good conversations. We always have the students who say, I work at Walmart, I get 30,000 steps a day. Good to go. And then you have people like me who sit at a desk all day, and I actually have to find time to get up and go walk. So again, it's creating a lot of extra conversations that aren't usually present in a math class. We are over time, I'm sorry, but here are the references. Thank you so much for coming. This is my favorite picture. Kirsten and I were together in October, right? And we got to take this picture. So enjoy that as one of my favorite ones.
All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, please put it into the chat or the Q&A, either works, and we'll give a few minutes for people to put any questions they have in there.
Thank you very much. Y'all are so nice.
I know. Thank you very much for coming. And if you do think about things as you go back to your class or your courses and think, oh gosh, I'd really like to revamp this discussion topic, send us an email and maybe we'll throw out some ideas. And Sally, happy to share the slides as well with you. I don't know, Kelsey, if they're available through the conference platform or anything.
They are not. I would say the best way would probably be, Sally, to email either one of you. If you want to directly send them your email. Or...
So I'll put, Tammy put her email into the chat. I'll do the same as well. But I'm not as fast of a typer.
Jill is asking, could you please go back to the list of questions listed under rate it.
And one that really wasn't talked about too much was when you're writing your discussion, like the guided peer replies or the directions for the first assignment, make sure that there are multiple answers, or make sure it's specific to the student. Can multiple students respond to any one classmate's post? Because that's what we get all the time, is that when a student comes and says, well, everybody's replied to everybody. But if you just design the prompt effectively, multiple students can respond so that you can have a good conversation, and it's not just one person and one student responding to that one person. Thank you so much. I know we're out of time and there's other good presentations to see.
There. That is very true. Thank you so much to both of you with that valuable information. That was really awesome. Our next concurrent session is going to begin at 3 o'clock Eastern time. You can view the chat session for the meeting room links or access the conference website at any time for the list of concurrent sessions and their descriptions. And while accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team, view a quick 5-minute demonstration, and be entered to win hourly giveaways. Your choice of a 6-month subscription to Audible, a 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card. So I'm going to put all of that in the chat right now for everybody. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and enjoys the rest of the presentations. Thank you so much.